Now let's begin. So this session is about sourcing strategies to support meaningful use adoption. And forward-thinking CIOs would always think of meaningful use in terms of not just like implementation, but successful adoption. So here we are here to hear about those strategies and exploring what functions when they do this to keep in-house and which can be sourced to specialized IT firms. So I'd like to welcome our speakers, Kenda Tevakoli and Lynn Orfkin. First, we have Kenda West Tevakoli. She joined Sibley Memorial Hospital in Washington, D.C. in 2008. She spent about 10 years with McKesson as Director of Corporate Strategy and Business Development. She has worked with Booz Allen supporting government healthcare initiatives and with the Department of Defense and VA. She has a degree in Business Administration and Information Systems from the University of Baltimore and a master's in Health Administration from University of Maryland. Then we have with us Lynn Orfkin, is the CEO of 290-bed community hospital of 500 physicians and 1,600 staff members. He has almost 30 years of experience in healthcare management and has managed hospitals in 5 different states. He earned his Bachelor in Science degree in Naval Science Academy from United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, and he holds 2 master's degrees from George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and 1 in administration with a concentration in personal management and in health services administration. So let's extend a warm welcome to our speaker.
Good morning, everybody. Shout out to the people way back there. Good morning. So, let's just go to the learning objectives. So I think this morning is just a little bit about, I think there are a lot of different ways that people come to outsourcing decisions, and they're all probably for different reasons. I think mine was a little bit unique, and my process was a little bit unique, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that. We're sort of tying it into meaningful use today. And since mine was a little different situation, meaningful use definitely played a part in it, not because that was going to be my absolute means for solving it, but because that was going to be my means for being able to solve it, being able to figure out what I could do and what I couldn't do, and figure out how to get help for those pieces that I didn't think I was so good at. So we're going to jump in. Sibley Memorial Hospital is in Washington, D.C. We are a nonprofit, 328-bed. We joined the Johns Hopkins Health System about a year and a half ago, and we are one of 3 community hospitals in the community division of Johns Hopkins. The other 2 are suburban in Howard County. I now have responsibility for all 3 of them, so now I'm figuring out what to do about outsourcing for the rest of them. And, of course, as meaningful use and who knows what's happening with ICD-10 start to bear down on me, I'm going to be making some more decisions. So I guess everybody has to put a cartoon in for some reason. This one's not that funny, but there aren't that many that say outsourced in them. So I wish that I was putting my feet up a lot, but I'm not. So and one of the reasons why we're not, and these are the things that everyone is dealing with, so none of these things are surprising. And I think the thing that's wrong about this slide is that there are just 2 arrows pointing toward that person's head, and in reality there's probably 30 arrows pointing toward our heads. So for me, when I got to Sibley and I started figuring out the arrows that were pointing toward my head, including meaningful use, I started trying to figure out which of the arrows I was going to be able to deal with and which I wasn't. So as I looked at what we do in hospital IT, and there are lots of different versions of this, at the core, I think those are the things that we were doing pretty well and the things that we felt more comfortable doing. We understood workflow. We understood the business of the hospital. We understood who our stakeholders were and what they needed to do. And I thought we did that pretty well. And as you move out to the blue circle, the infrastructure, the network, the data center, thought we did that less well. And then as you moved out to the outer circles, help desk support and performance monitoring, I thought we did that even less well. and then as I just kind of sort of graded myself, I was like, we really only do that green circle pretty well. We don't do the rest of the stuff that well. But when you're a small community hospital, and at that time we were still standalone, you're not deep with resources. You can't add a lot of head count, and so you're always trying to figure out how you're going to do more with what you have. And I was kind of coming to a dead end on that road. So let's see. Yeah, there's a little checkbox that moves up. So I got to say that outsourcing was not really on my plate to do. It was not a high priority for me. It was not something I was brought there and told to, you're gonna outsource some of this stuff. It really was not on my agenda. But as I began to sort of process the things that were coming at me, I had to start looking for solutions. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But the requirements, though, for trying to figure out the solution were really very basic. Again, community hospital, I didn't have the ability to surge within my budget, so it had to be cost effective. It had to work with the budget that I had. I had a customer service need that was unmet in terms of having a very rudimentary help desk, and I had to do something to improve customer service. And then if I was going to bring on a partner, I had to have improved business process. Otherwise, why do it? So as I found out, I didn't know a whole lot about outsourcing. I'd seen it done at a previous health system, which was one reason why it wasn't high on my list. It was kind of like sausage making, and it wasn't pretty, and it wasn't easy for them to do. But there are lots of ways to do it, and these are a few of them. I would point out specifically, especially for a community hospital at the time, just-in-time resources. That's sort of an important point to me because, needs change. People come at you and say, oh, by the way, we've decided to implement blah, blah, blah. Sorry you missed that meeting. And all of a sudden you need an interface engine expert. You need a citrus expert. You need to really sort of surge in one particular resource area for 2 weeks, 6 months. And it's very hard to flex with the staff that you have. One of the things that I've found is that having an outsourcing partner has allowed me to be able to expand resources and expand capabilities permanently or for just the period of time that I've needed. So there are lots of models, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what we decided to do. So the search and selection process, this is not unlike other similar processes that you would go through to select other vendors or other systems. I will not lie to you. We didn't do this. I kind of went straight to that narrow search button, and in part, as I began to consider my options, I became particularly intrigued with the fact that the outsourcing partner that I chose was completely hospital focused, and to me that was very important. So I narrowed my search immediately, and I really kind of went right to the evaluation stage. It's not necessarily what everyone would do. In our situation, it worked. I was able to sell it. But here's a sample process. And in that evaluation, I guess the few things that I would point out, I don't know how well you can read those things, probably not that well. Industry reputation was very important to me, closely followed by customer referrals because that is their industry reputation. I did a lot of referral source checking. I was also concerned about contracting. It had to be a fairly quick, painless process. Staffing, reporting and data retention, systems, and costs. Obviously, cost is always, way up there. But so we kind of jumped to evaluation. And as I had to talk to other members of executive leadership, as I had to talk to the board, the way I kind of summed it up for them was that, we have so many competing priorities right now, and, there are more now than there were 6 months ago, by far. we've got to figure out how we can flex to handle it. We don't have the expertise that we need as a small community hospital to do the infrastructure planning that we need to do. I can't afford to hire a chief technical architect. But there are some things that we do really well. So it might be a smart time to figure out if we can find a partner who would help us do those things that we don't do so well. Our end users, as I mentioned previously, were suffering because we had a half-baked help desk service from about 7 to 5. And so a physician that came in at 10 p.m. and needed real help couldn't really get it. And then, of course, at about that same time, it really kind of was a perfect storm. Meaningful use was being revealed. And I think at that time, as we looked at the requirements, you just wondered how you were going to stay up with the requirements on meaningful use, let alone get it all done. So, as I mentioned, I thought that there were some things that we did well, and what I basically wanted was a menu of selections that I could pick and choose from. I didn't want someone to come in and do it all. I thought that I thought that we really understood our customers, and I wanted to make sure that my IT staff was still really the customer-facing part of the IT team. So what we did outsource was database management, infrastructure management, help desk, and network monitoring. So essentially, I kept at Sibley only those application and management services that I felt we did well. Talk a little bit more about that. Help desk, I mentioned, was really I think that if you don't solve for that first, it's so hard to get anything else done. We had put in an EHR system about 6 months before, and I was just literally dying because every day there were physicians coming in after hours needing help, and we just had no way. And the small staff that I had was just getting exhausted because they just couldn't deal with it 24 hours a day. So just to give you a sense of some of the things that I get now that there was no way I really had a way to produce before, this is just a simple chart of calls answered and web tickets. And you'll notice, I mean, as you look at this, you can take a look at it and say, oh, well, we had something going on this month, or we had an issue, whatever. So in this one, if you look at May and October, we had a pretty big spike in calls, and that happens to coincide with a two-phase rollout of a VoIP phone system. So we can see that we had a big surge there. Another report I get is customer satisfaction. I mentioned this was one of my goals in putting in a help desk. I wanted to really improve in customer satisfaction, keep it at a high level. So again, if we look at May, you'll see that we took a little nosedive in customer satisfaction as we put in that VoIP phone system. Maybe to be expected, but what I really like about this is that if you look at October, we're back up at 93.4%. So what happened in May was we learned what to do for that VoIP phone system. We learned how to handle that. And then in October, we actually had the most calls we've ever had, but the satisfaction was really high. So that, to me, A, just being able to sort of work through that information, and then B, being able to see that, you know what, we learned, we improved, here's the proof. This is pretty powerful stuff if, you've never even been able to track your tickets before. So, what's been the result? I have lowered my operating costs, and one of the advantages has been that, as a standalone hospital, you don't have lots of leverage in purchasing, and now I leverage the purchasing power of my outsourcing vendor, which is a big deal for a small hospital. As you can see, I have much more satisfaction with help desk. We're able to be nimble. We're able to learn from our mistakes and improve. We have the metrics now. We have much better hardware planning. As I said, I can sort of lean on their expertise. I don't really have a chief technical architect, but I have a partner who has lots of expertise. And I think we've established a lot of repeatable processes. I think that the quality of our operation is much higher. So I'm going to turn it over to Len, and he can talk to you about his experience.
Good morning. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Crittenton Hospital Medical Center, which is Rochester, Michigan. It's actually in Rochester Hills, but we're right on the border, so it's actually in both cities. We are 290 beds acute care. We got 500 plus on the medical staff. We've been made most wired for 6 years in a row, and most wireless for the last 4 years, which seems kind of oxymoronic, but we're happy to have the honor. I took over the hospital in 2000 and actually assumed the leadership of it from the Hunter Group, so you can kind of put that in perspective as to what the facility was like back in 2000. It was definitely a turnaround situation, and we've done that, I think, quite well and are continuing to progress. One of the things that we're a little different than most of the hospitals in the greater Detroit area is that in Michigan, virtually everybody is aligned with somebody else, and we're one of only 3 independent facilities left in the southeast Michigan market, and one of those other 2 is about to fall any day, from what I read in the newspaper. We have in our mission statement the word partnership, and we stress that word every day. We have lots of partnerships to help us maintain that independence, and goes to the point where the board actually they have a policy that we're going to remain independent, and their mantra is we're looking for partners, not parents. And so that's the kind of credo that we live at the facility. The history of the facility from an IT standpoint, when I got there, it had a homegrown legacy system. It was a very good one, but not one that was going to take us into this century. And we had a very small staff, very efficient, but we recognized the importance of IT, certainly as a business objective, to turn the facility around and make it a place that we're all proud of. We purchased EMR in 2002. We were struggling with the small staff that we had to get it in place. We tried buying services a la carte for several months, and it just wasn't working out. And so we determined that we needed a partner that had a lot more muscle to fully implement what the EMR brought to the table, and we went into a full outsourcing model in 2003. The left-hand side of this slide shows some of our broad-lined strategic objectives, and on the right side, the IT strategies that were in place with our vendor. And you can see how one supports the other. And we've been very successful in that relationship, and IT continues to support our overall strategic goals. I didn't realize I had to push that twice. We went to a full outsourcing model when we made the decision to go outside, because we just didn't have the talent in-house. And we even have remote hosting for our EMR. Just to kind of put it in perspective, where we stand as far as the cost to do that is, if you can see the data on this slide, it shows that we're basically kind of right on average with all of the HIMSS facilities, but we have a lot more efficiency. We have a lot more terminals, applications, devices in place and supported by a smaller ratio of people, and our costs are literally right in line with the average U.S. hospitals. One of the things that did come along the way in the last year or so, obviously, is the advent of meaningful use. And with that, we kind of changed focus from using it to support strategy to making sure that we are in compliance with meaningful use. One of the things about our hospital is, and it's not typical in Michigan, despite the high union presence with the auto industry. My hospital is about half unionized, including the nursing staff. We have a physician staff is entirely private. We do not employ physicians except for a few unique specialists. And that obviously makes it a little bit more difficult to drive that change home. But we focused on it very closely and making sure that folks took ownership of the process and ownership of the program. And quite frankly, you need to have that in order to drive the meaningful use home. You could probably get to stage 1 relatively easy compared to some of the later ones, but without that back-end adoption wholeheartedly, you're probably not going to make it to stage 2 or stage 3. We have a lot of support in place with our partner to support the meaningful use, a lot of training, ongoing user support, and the infrastructure to make sure that we're always up and running. We've set very high standards. We've never backed down from those standards, continue to drive forward with them. If you back down, I think one of the things that I always keep in mind is there's a well-known patient satisfaction consultant that uses the phrase, what you permit, you promote, and the first time you permit it, you just change the rules. And so we've stayed the course very, very strongly to drive forward with meaningful use. We have a lot of support in place, both within the hospital and outside of the hospital through our vendor to support the physician and the nursing staff in driving towards full adoption of the electronic medical record. We've driven our culture to support and endorse it. They have ownership of it. We've even used our management engineers to reprocess or redesign processes to help support the meaningful use. Some of the ongoing user support that we have in place is the IT staff rounds. We have a great help desk that's available 24/7, and they have just-in-time support, physician hotline to deal with issues, and it always seems to happen at the off hours that the problems develop, but they're there to help and to move the whole process forward. Some of the core infrastructure needs, you got to have ease of use and consistency of the use, and making sure that we're linking ourselves with the offices with us, and having proactive monitoring. I think one of the things that I can say that I don't have any trouble sleeping at night worrying about whether the connectivity is going to be there. Our available on time is just incredibly high. Of course, we always want it to be 100%, but some things are going to happen every once in a while, but they happen very, very rarely. To show where we're at in the meaningful use, using the HIMSS analytics, we find ourselves at stage 4 at the current time, and unable to move to stage 5 for a few more months because we're building a new tower, and with that new tower comes a new pharmacy, and our present pharmacy space-wise doesn't allow us to be able to have the space to do the closed-loop medication. And we hopefully will have that tower available sometime in the fall of 2013 so that we can begin to transition to the closed loop. To make sure that we have continuous assessment of where we're at, our IT outsourcing partner is on the top of this, and our goals, Crittenton goals, are on the bottom here, and we are always working together to make sure that we're doing the right things at the right time to continue to move us forward in a positive fashion. And to finish up, I'd like to kind of go through David Letterman's top 10s for a meaningful outsourcing relationship, and I'm going to let him to take the first one.
I'll just do it. Okay. Right. So 1, ensure the cultures of the two organizations are a good fit.
I should have started at 10, but that's okay. We'll.
Oh, I blew that. Let me start at 10. We should have done it 10 at the top and down. So, well, I think this one's easy. Clearly understand the reasons why you need to outsource.
Right. Number 9, get referrals and interview current outsourcer clients.
Number 8, start small to reduce risk if necessary.
Number 7, articulate a common vision and IT strategies with business leaders.
Number 6, expect best practices in setting IT and meaningful use goals, understand the impact, knowledge, project management, and address key issues.
Number 5, establish service level agreements and measure performance based on agreed upon metrics. And I think I'd add another comment on there. Just make sure that everything is very clearly defined in these service level agreements. It's a very important issue and helps a lot in the relationship.
Number 4, open door to outsourcer executives for issue escalation when necessary.
Number 3, establish executive sponsorship roles, IT steering committee consisting of hospital and outsourcer leaders.
You do number 2 because I want to do number 1 again.
Okay. Okay. Understand the contracting terms and always have an out clause. And number 1.
And number 1, ensure that the cultures of the two organizations are a good fit.
So we have some time for a couple of questions from the audience, if anybody is interested. We have 2 mics in the aisle, so if anybody wants to use.
Okay, so number 1 there, the culture is being a good fit. How do you ascertain the culture of the outsourcer? Not your own, but theirs.
I'll try and answer that. I think one of the things you got to do in the whole process, and we've mentioned it earlier in there, is to get folks who are already using that outsourcer and that firm, and to really do thorough interviews dealing with the culture as well as the capabilities and the cost.
I think one of the things in my experience was that the fact that my outsourcer was completely dedicated to hospitals and healthcare, our cultures were already aligned in that regard because they completely understood my business and everything that I was going through, all of their other clients were going through as well. So it was very easy to have a conversation with them, and I felt very solid about them understanding what my challenges were.
2 questions for you. Are these all stateside or are they offshore programs?
I think we only considered the onshore companies, although in the early 2000 decade there was a lot of contact from offshore, and although I hadn't heard of anybody marketing to me since, just very recently, I've started to see that that's sort of coming alive once again.
All stateside.
Okay. On the SLA, did you have somebody work with you, or did you get a framework of the SLA before you started, or did the outsource company bring an SLA that you modified?
I think for me, I think probably all 3 were a yes answer. We had lots of samples. The outsourcer brought SLA to the table, introduced us to the concept, and we spent a lot of time creating what we agreed to.
Right. Same here. We had SLAs in the contract. They were basically the template that the outsourcer used at other places. And frankly, it was taking us to a level where we weren't before, and our ability to tweak that as we went forward was there. So definitely, an introduction for us.
I can certainly see how you would need to do outsourcing, especially if there are temporary needs or fluctuations in your needs in various areas. But of course, there's also going to be a premium paid for using outsources, using a third party over hiring the people yourself. are there any areas where you anticipate continuing outsourcing indefinitely and never bring it into your fold of the department?
Well, I think we probably both have an answer to that. We have not considered moving it out. I mean, it's always something that could be done, but not easily, and we have lots of other focuses, certainly at my facility now, and that's not it's not on the near horizon.
Right. I think that, I mentioned as I was speaking that I needed to be bigger in terms of what I could offer, and I needed to be better in terms of the quality of the services that I offered. But I really had no way to really expand my budget and no way to expand my head count. And so by going with a partner, I was able to be broader than I would otherwise have been able to be. And so, in order for me to equal that, I would have to add headcount, and I just don't have that luxury. So I can't see, going backwards.
Wouldn't hiring those people internally ultimately be less expensive over, 5, 10, 15 years?
No, it's not. My budget now is less than what it was before because I've been able to relieve some other contracts. I had an on-site printing or a printer management company. I've been able to relieve those. My help desk is a little more expensive than it was before, but basically I had no help desk before. So I've only been budget neutral to positive in the 2+ years that I've outsourced.
Thank you.
And I'd like to parrot on that too. We have a bit of an apples and an oranges to compare here because I was very small with a legacy system prior to outsourcing, and now we're full-blown EMR, lots of capabilities. So it's be impossible to compare with ourselves prior to. But I don't think that we could do it cheaper. I think the volume discounts and the efficiencies that our vendor brings to the table, I think helps sell itself.
Thank you.
Hello. Do you have any recommendations on the best places to find partners, like magazines, trade shows, just referrals? What would you recommend?
My first suggestion is just networking. Everybody knows their like positions in the other hospitals are not necessarily just in your area, but in your state or across the country. And I think there's no limit on where you can check and find out. Some firms may be strictly geographically located, but others are national in nature, and so you probably best doing the networking and talking to people rather than reading an advertisement.
Right. I agree. Word of mouth, and also Class does a nice job of profiling vendors and giving you some sense of how they stack up in customers' estimations. In my case, I wasn't really looking for an outsourcing vendor, and I happened to read a couple of articles about hospitals who had done some really impressive things, and I happened to see my outsourcing vendor mentioned in that article. So I reached out to them. I didn't put out an RFP. I sort of, I marketed myself to them instead of the other way around.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, so this brings us to the end of the session. We'd like to thank our speakers by a round of applause, please. Thank you.